He worked at the bus station for 28 years. No one knew his name. And then one day, he didn't show up for his shift, and the whole town froze. The bench by the window. Every morning in Greenville started the same way. Not according to the city schedule, but according to his. An hour before sunrise, when the streets were still asleep and the neon sign of the bus terminal blinked lazily in half-sleep, a man in a gray windbreaker in a worn-out cap would appear at the edge of the parking lot. The drivers knew him, the cashiers, the janitors. They called him Charlie. But outside the station, almost no one said his name. He wasn't listed in reports. There was a dash in the roster, and the time cards skipped right over him. Just Charlie, as if the place knew him better than the paper did. He came first, not by schedule, by habit. Thermos of tea in one hand, an old keyring in the other. He'd unlock the side door that always stuck, shoulder it open, switch on the hall lights, and take the first steps down the corridor that smelled of diesel, cold metal, and forgotten brochures. He'd start the coffee machine, adjust the wall calendar that always drifted, and instinctively lift the blinds in the dispatcher's office. He didn't ask. He just did it. He wasn't the boss. He had no uniform, no badge, no office. But everyone knew. If Charlie was there, the station would wake up the right way. He knew the drivers' names, their birthdays, who drank coffee without sugar, whose kids scrounged coins for the vending machine. He made sure Lucille, the elderly ticket clerk, had a working heater under her desk. He replaced light bulbs even when no one asked. He remembered who had left their gloves behind. And he always noticed if someone was sitting quietly on the bench near the exit, eyes red from tears. They don't write about people like him in reports. But without them, a station isn't really a station. He was simply there, every day, year after year. And so when one morning the terminal doors remained shut, for the first time in many years, people felt it. He wasn't there, and it felt like silence in an engine, not loud, but wrong, as if something inside had stopped turning, and everyone could hear it. Monday began cold. It was late October, and a dull morning light hung over Greenville, unable to decide whether it was dawn or just cloudy. At the bus station, everything was as usual. The street lights were still on, the coffee in the vending machine flowed in a thin stream, and the first drivers were wiping down the headlights of their buses. But something was missing. Emma, the cashier, noticed it first. She always arrived at 5:50. She knew that by that time, the light would already be on in the dispatcher's office. The warm yellow rectangle to the left of the main entrance. Today, darkness. The door wasn't just ajar, it was locked. She stood for a moment, listened, then knocked. No answer. Pressed the doorbell. Silence. Weird, she murmured, her voice not so much questioning as quietly uneasy. Last year, Charlie had once missed a day, caught a cold, but even then he warned 3 people not to worry. He'd even left a note on the boiler room door. But today, nothing. She pulled out her phone and called the technician. "Harry, have you seen Charlie today?" "No, not yet. But he's always earlier than us. Usually has the blinds up by now." "Exactly, and now, no blinds, no lights." 15 minutes later, half the station was puzzling over where Charles was. The trash hadn't been taken out. The sugar in the vending machine was gone. The turnstile, as if by Murphy's Law, jammed, and old Fred, the driver on the Lafayette route, got stuck in it with his backpack. "Where's Charlie?" he grunted. "This thing doesn't work without him." Emma approached the terminal, but had no idea what to press. Charlie had always handled it, silently, patiently, with a kind of personal knowledge of all the old system's quirks. Fred managed to wriggle out of the turnstile, caught his breath, and said suddenly, "Maybe he got upset after Friday." "After what?" Martha, the second cashier, asked. "Well, Louise snapped at him on Friday about the trash. He cleaned it all up without a word, but Charlie never showed offense, but he remembered. I've worked with him since the 80s, I know. He could go silent and not talk for a week." "Oh, God," Emma exhaled. "You really think he just didn't come because of that?" "I'm not saying that," Fred replied. "But when someone with a heart like his suddenly disappears, You start wondering what we might have done to lose him. The dispatcher's room was cool. The papers on the desk were untouched. On the windowsill, his mug. White with a crack on the rim. Dry inside. No tea today. He didn't come. At first it sounded ordinary. Well, it happens. Maybe he caught a cold. Maybe he was delayed. But after 30 minutes, everyone already felt something was wrong. Too wrong. He never ran late. Not in snow. Not in heat. Not even the day the whole block lost power. He came in, without complaint, just did what was needed. The shift manager tried calling him. No answer. Then he called Charlie's neighbor, the man who lived in the apartment across the hall. An ambulance came at night, he said. I woke up to the siren, saw them take him away. He was alone. I think he called it himself. The station froze. Even the coffee machine went quiet, as if it heard too. That day the buses still left. A bit later than usual. Someone fixed the turnstile. Someone swept the floor. Someone remembered where the spare key was. Even Fred, still grumbling, checked the tire pressure on someone else's bus. But it was all done with a sense that the station was trembling, just slightly, as if a fragile part of the mechanism, long unnoticed, had vanished. And now everything held together only on air. In the staff room, it was unusually quiet. No scent of his tea, no old radio whispering static and news, no calm voice saying, without turning, Harry, don't forget your flashlight. Martha, check Wednesday's schedule. And on the hook by the window hung his windbreaker. Gray, slightly frayed at the cuffs, the same one he wore every day. No one dared take it down. By the third day without Charlie, the station began to falter. At first, in small ways. The digital board in the waiting area was blinking, showing the wrong time. 43 minutes early. Usually Charlie adjusted it by hand. I don't trust satellites when a screwdriver does the job, he'd say. No one else knew how to open the panel without messing up the alignment. Harry, the technician, sat on a stepladder, surrounded by screwdrivers and pliers, muttering under his breath. How the hell did he fix this axle? It's supposed to feed in at an angle, but damn spring. He had already taken the panel off 3 times, and each time the display flickered more erratically. You worked with him for, 10 years? Emma asked, watching from below. He didn't show anything, Harry grumbled, not looking away. He just did it. Then he'd smile like it was nothing. But this is a 6th-generation module, discontinued. Where am I supposed to get a schematic now? He climbed down, slapped the side of the board. And he never complained. I would have filed a report weeks ago. But him? He just tinkered with it, quietly, no whining. Then came the cleaning problems. Louise grumbled she couldn't find the key to the cleaning closet. He used to hide it in some old tea tin, she said, digging through a cabinet, like a secret stash. Thought it was funny, always stashing things like we were in some spy movie. She reached toward the back wall, felt some tape, tugged, and the tin popped loose. Inside, the key, and a tiny note and pencil. Louise, don't forget Friday. Inspection's coming, and you'll forget the handrail rag again. She froze, then quietly sat down on a box of cleaner, clutching the note. He knew I'd forget. Left this a month ago, and I never even said thank you. Emma came over and sat beside her. He knew all of us, she said softly, even the little things. Then came the schedule screw-up. The Monroe bus got switched with the Albany one. One left too early, the other left behind half its passengers. Chaos. Martha lost her temper. One person can't be this important, she said, raising her voice. He was just Charlie, not an engineer, not a supervisor. Exactly, Harry replied, wiping his hands on a rag. He wasn't on any list, and that's why we thought he was just Charlie. But turns out he was the glue. Without him, everything unravels, slowly but surely. On the 4th day, it got worse. An elderly woman in a wheelchair came early to catch the intercity bus to Dallas. She arrived on time, but no one was there to help. Charlie would have seen her instantly. Lowered the ramp, held the door, helped with the straps. The driver was late. He was irritated. She missed the bus. He drove off. 10 minutes later, she sat crying in the lobby, not knowing how she'd make it to her sister's funeral. Emma brought her water, called a cab, phoned the neighboring station, and arranged a free transfer. The driver returned, apologetic, but the damage was done. "This wouldn't have happened if he were here," Louise said. "He would have seen it. He always saw." More and more people began to remember that Charlie didn't just unlock doors and take out trash. He noticed the things everyone else dismissed as not my job. He kept every driver's schedule in his head. He knew who had diabetes and where the extra insulin pens were stored. He called the kids of elderly passengers when no one came to pick them up. He was always the first to step in when someone looked lost, and the last to leave, checking whether the boiler was off. None of that was in his job description. In fact, he didn't even have one. But the absence felt like a hole in the wall, invisible until the draft started cutting down your spine. On the fifth day, Mr. Barkley, the station director, showed up at the morning meeting with a folder in hand. "We need to redistribute some duties," he began. "The task Mr. Wally used to handle. He's elderly and not officially employed. There's a chance he may not return." Silence. Emma slowly lifted her gaze. "He didn't handle duties," she said. "He was just here. And he did what had to be done when the rest of us looked away." Barkley straightened his tie nervously. "Still, the station can't rely on a single person." "No, it shouldn't," Harry said hoarsely. "But it did. All this time, we just didn't want to see it." Now that he was gone, the station felt it. Every day. As if someone hadn't just turned off a light, but dimmed the memory of how it had ever worked in the first place. Because that's how invisible work works. You don't notice it until it's no longer there. It started with a single piece of paper. On Monday morning, exactly 1 week after Charlie had been taken to the hospital, a crumpled sheet of A4 paper appeared, taped to the old bulletin board near the staff room. The handwriting was uneven, done in marker, but it had heart. "Thank you, Charlie. We're waiting for you." Below that, signatures. First just 4. Louise, the cleaner, Harry and the technician, Emma and Martha, the cashiers. Then more. People stopped by at different times. Someone brought a pen. Someone wrote over another's name. Even Kyle, the teenager who washed the buses on weekends, scribbled, "Best guy. Helped me when I froze in December. Won't forget." And then something no one expected happened. By the board stood Alexei, one of the new hires, a quiet type, hired on contract a month ago, always on the fringe, glued to his phone during breaks, barely speaking. He read the message, stood there for a moment, and then pulled a pencil from his pocket. In awkward, childlike writing, he added, "He gave me a dry jacket. I didn't know his name back then." Emma, seeing it, suddenly remembered. That day, Alexei had come in soaked after a bus splashed him on the lot. While everyone else just stared, Charlie disappeared for a minute and came back with a clean windbreaker. No comment, no fuss. Emma stood frozen, then turned and headed to the back corridor, to the old boiler room. She'd known for a while. Charlie never rested in the break room. He always sat on a folding chair by the boiler, towel rolled behind his back. He'd say, "If something blows, I'll be the first to hear it." She used to think he was exaggerating. Not anymore. On the second day, someone taped a photo next to the message. A faded one, Charlie on the station's front steps, holding a cup of tea, wearing his cap and windbreaker, caught mid-smile like the camera had surprised him. "I brought it," said Martha, holding the photo. "It was from the day he fixed the coffee machine. We joked it brewed better than the cafes." Louise narrowed her eyes skeptically. "You? Weren't you always saying he didn't belong here? No position, no schedule." "Yes," Martha replied evenly. "And now I see who didn't belong that day. It wasn't him." She taped the photo next to the note. Someone added a sprig of dried lavender, the kind Charlie used to keep in drawers so the air wouldn't go stale. Later that day, Emma posted a photo of the board online. No slogans. Just, he wasn't on payroll, but he was the heart of this place. If you knew Charlie Wally, share how he helped you. The post took off. The first comments came from drivers. Then, from passengers. One man recalled how Charlie had helped him find a lost wallet the day he was taking his mother to hospice. A woman remembered her daughter going missing in the waiting area back in 2011. And Charlie finding her before the loudspeaker did. He gave her an apple, walked her to the desk. The comments kept coming, no grand speeches, just simple kindnesses, nearly forgotten, until someone else noticed. The Greenville Tribune published a column, "The Station's Invisible Hero." The editor called Emma, asked permission to reprint the photo of the board. "We honestly thought he was just the night guard," he said. "Turns out, he was so much more." And then the mayor's office started asking questions. Who was Charles Wally? Why wasn't he listed anywhere? And why were people across the city suddenly talking about him? Director Barkley grew uneasy. At the next planning meeting, he tried to rein things in. "I understand your attachment," he began carefully, "but we have to be realistic. He was a non-staff volunteer, no health clearance, not officially employed. And who kept the bathroom from leaking for a week?" Harry cut in. "Who knew which bus the man with a fractured hip needed, and wheeled him there himself? Who kept the lost and found list when we stopped doing it?" added Martha. "Who brought you tea last November when you were running a fever in your office?" Louise snapped. Silence fell. Emma stood off to the side, holding Charlie's old notebook. The one where he wrote, "Harry, check flashlight. Lucille, remind about glasses. Bus 41? Delay. Emma, don't forget your daughter's birthday." She posted a photo of that page with the caption, "This is what care looks like." No title, no paycheck, no applause. Local blogs shared it. The city radio picked it up the next day. There were no protests at the station, no placards, no speeches, just a piece of paper, a photo, a notebook. But it was enough. Enough for someone to say, "We don't want another person to vanish," and only afterward realize what they meant. Not to restore justice, but to make sure no one else disappears in the shadows. City council meetings in Greenville were held every second Wednesday of the month, strictly by the book. Coffee from thermoses, gray printed agendas, discussions about sidewalk repairs, and the timeline for fixing the Willow Creek Bridge. Usually slow, predictable. But that October, one item stirred more talk than all the others combined. Item 7, petition regarding the civic service status of Charles Wally. It was introduced by Councilwoman Latimer, an elderly woman with glasses on a chain. She set a folder on the table, opened it carefully, and began to speak with a steady but restrained voice. "Until last month, I didn't know who Charles Wally was, but now half the city does." Some members exchanged glances. The mayor's aide leaned over and whispered, "That's the one from the bus station." Latimer opened the folder. Inside, printouts of social media comments, a photo of the bulletin board, a copy of the now famous post titled, "28 Years in the Shadows, the one who cared while we weren't looking." This man was never on the official payroll. He had no benefits, no title, yet he kept the station running, a place that serves thousands of people each week. And when he disappeared, the station nearly ground to a halt. "Excuse me," said a man in his 50s, chairman of the finance committee. "Look, I'm sympathetic, but if we start handing out employee status to every volunteer, where do we draw the line?" He never asked for anything. He did it because he wanted to. "Because he cared," Latimer said quietly. "And we just took it for granted. That's the difference." "You have to understand," the chairman continued, "I'm not against recognizing someone's efforts. But if we honor one unregistered helper, tomorrow we'll have dozens lining up, and we have no system for this." "Then maybe it's time to create one," said another council member. "Isn't it odd that the one person holding the place together is the only one still being called nobody?" Silence fell. The city's legal advisor stood. In his hands, Charlie's original notebook, passed along by Emma. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began calmly, "this isn't a diary. It's 11 years of operational notes, small tasks, repairs, lost items, passenger assistance. It's not paperwork. It's labor, daily labor." He flipped to a page and read aloud, "December 3rd. Batteries replaced in smoke detector. Hall 2. Child lost a glove. Found and returned at 7:05 p.m. Toilet window jammed, secured with wire. Reminder to Martha about her medication. He never asked for a thing, but the city got plenty in return, as it often does, from people who just do the work. The room was quiet. The mayor, an older man with thinning hair and a class ring, stared at the table. Well, technically, he was under a civic support contract, part-time maintenance. We have procedures. And we have a conscience, Latimer said softly. Sometimes one must outweigh the other. When it came time to vote, the council members hesitated. Then the first raised his hand, then the second. Then the finance chair, with a deep breath, like swallowing a stone, also voted yes. The motion passed. Not quite unanimous, but close. The council approved the formation of a working group to develop criteria for awarding the title Honorary Civic Employee of Greenville to individuals who had made exceptional contributions, even outside formal roles. The next day, Station Director Barkley was summoned to City Hall. He sat before the deputy mayor, shoulders slightly hunched. On the desk in front of him, no contracts, no records, just a list of bus routes and a notebook. The deputy mayor didn't raise his voice. He simply opened the notebook and said, "You signed off on 3 boiler inspections in the past 5 years. Who do you think was doing the actual maintenance?" Barkley said nothing. "Did you know he worked through every holiday? That he fixed locks while your security team waited for contractors? That he called hospitals when elderly passengers got lost?" Barkley finally muttered, "We thought of him as a long-timer, a helpful guy. He never complained." "And you never asked," the deputy replied. "It's easy when someone is just there, quiet, asking for nothing, until one day he isn't. And only then do we realize who was holding the whole thing together." Barkley said nothing more, but the city had begun to remember. On Monday, exactly 43 days after the station doors had remained shut, everything looked normal. The streetlights dimmed sluggishly. The sky above Greenville was gray and flat. Emma walked along the platform, scarf tucked tight. The morning was damp, and the air carried the ache of a coming cold. As always, she glanced at the dispatch window and saw darkness. "Still empty," she said under her breath. Harry, standing beside her, shook his head. "I really thought maybe today." "No," Emma sighed. "Apparently not today." She had already turned away when Kyle, the same teenager from weekends, called from the entrance. "Look." Only then did they notice it. The blinds, raised. Not all the way, just halfway. Exactly the way Charlie used to do it. Inside, no one. But on the bench by the window near the exit, someone was sitting. A gray windbreaker, a worn cap, a thermos resting on his knees. Charles Wally. He wasn't looking at the door. He was watching the platform, as if waiting for someone, as if he hadn't come back, but had simply come to say goodbye. For the first 10 minutes, no one approached. People walked past slowly, casting glances, afraid to disturb a fragile balance. Emma gripped the strap of her bag. Her heart pounded. Harry stepped forward, cautiously, as if approaching a wild creature. "Morning, Charlie." "Morning's a morning," Charlie said without turning. "Coffee's weak. Who's making it now?" Harry chuckled and looked down. He wanted to say something important, but the words tangled in his throat. Fred came next. His eyes were watery, but his voice was firm. "I knew you'd come back. Maybe not for long, but at least once." "I never left," Charlie replied simply. "Just sat somewhere else for a while." And then came the quiet flood. Elderly folks, drivers, school kids, cashiers. Someone brought gloves. Someone brought a card. Someone brought nothing. Just sat next to him in silence. But not everyone smiled. Martha stood near the wall, hesitant. Louise stared at the floor, as if replaying her words. Even Kyle, the one who'd once written "best guy," kept his hands deep in his pockets, unsure what to say. But he was there, alive, like a wind that had been missing from the room, now softly rustling the blinds again. By noon, the mayor arrived. No motorcade, no press, just a document and a box. He stood near the bench, looked around at the crowd, nodded to Charlie, and sat beside him. I wasn't planning to give a speech, he said, but I need to. 20 years ago, my mother came here from Huntsville. Elderly, nervous, carrying a travel bag. She got lost during her transfer. I was out of town, unreachable. Then she called me from a stranger's number. She said, "There's a man here with me. He knows your address." And he gave me tea. That was you. Charlie didn't reply. He just lifted one eyebrow slightly. I never learned your name. I forgot your face. But I recognized your work. That's why I'm here. He pulled a plaque from the box. Charles Wally, observer, mentor, keeper of the station. 28 years of quiet service. Forever in the history of Greenville. The plaque was fixed to that same bench. Now it was officially his place. We want to offer you the position back. Full hours, a pension, everything you deserve, and a seat on the City Transit Council, if you're willing. Charlie nodded lightly. He looked toward the platform where a little girl waved from a bus window. He raised his hand in return. Brief, calm. I'll think about it, he said, but make sure they get a proper kettle. This one whistles like it's cursed. And that was all. That evening, the dispatch office smelled like coffee again. Someone placed a potted plant on the windowsill. The one that always wilted before. The schedule on the wall was handwritten. And on the bench, he was sitting again. Not a hero, not a supervisor. Just a man in the right place. As if the station, having lost its rhythm, had finally found its breath again. There was no ceremony, no tent, no microphone, no printed programs. Just another Thursday. A little damp in the morning, steam rising over rooftops, bus headlights dragging through the fog. Charlie, as usual, came early. The dispatch light was already on, but he was the one who raised the blinds first, checked the boiler, brewed tea, walked to the window. Everything was as it should be. Almost. On the bench by the window, something caught the light. A metal plate. He stepped closer. A plaque. Plain, unframed, screwed in tight. The engraving read, Charles Wally, observer, mentor, keeper of the station. 28 years of quiet service, forever in the history of Greenville. No fanfare, no announcement, just there. Solid, not for show. He sat down, watched the platform like he always did, checking where people moved, which bus was idling, where the hallway light flickered. About 10 minutes later, someone sat beside him. Good morning, said the mayor. He wore a casual jacket, no tie. In his hands, 2 paper cups. One was sugar, like you like it. Other one's just coffee. Charlie nodded, took his, sipped, and said nothing. I figured you'd expect paperwork, the mayor said. I did, Charlie replied. But then again, you figured I'd be here anyway. Not because of the papers. They sat in silence. Harry passed by, exchanged a glance, gave a nod. Louise walked by with a mop bucket, slowed down, said nothing. A boy on a scooter zipped past, casting a glance at the plaque. You could have chosen not to come back, the mayor said. I didn't leave, Charlie replied. I just wasn't sitting here. Why? I'm not the one driving the train, Charlie said, shaking his head. I'm just the guy who tightened the rail bolt when no one was looking. If the bolt's holding, leave it be. The mayor stood, brushed off his knees. We still want to make it official. Full status, pension, all that you're owed. Charlie didn't answer right away. He watched a girl on the platform waving from the bus window. Blue mittens. She had taken one off and now waved boldly into the cold air. Sunlight struck the glass. The station was alive. If the plaque's staying, he said at last, then I'll stay too. As long as people keep coming. As long as the station breathes. The mayor said nothing, just nodded and walked away, like any other man. And Charlie stayed. By noon, the dispatch room smelled of tea again. Someone had left a new cushion on the bench. Someone else. A note. You told my grandmother where the bathroom was. Back then, I didn't know what care meant. Now I do. Thank you. Later that afternoon, the turnstile jammed again. Mr. Wally, someone called from the entrance. It's stuck. Again. He got up, picked up a screwdriver, and walked over, like always. Greenville Station kept moving to its quiet rhythm. The diesel engines had been replaced by electric ones. Tickets were now sold through an app. The schedule glowed across a big digital screen near the entrance. But some things remained the same. Every morning at 6:15, the light turned on in the dispatcher's office. The blinds were raised halfway, and someone already sat on the bench by the window, with a thermos, in a windbreaker, watching the platform come to life. Sometimes it was Charlie, sometimes a young man named Ryan. People called him an assistant, but he was more than that. The grandson of one of the station's old-timers. Someone who once planned to leave for a city that doesn't wait, but one day he stayed, all because of a single conversation with Charlie. He had asked, "What keeps you here? You could have left long ago." And Charlie had replied without turning, "Nothing keeps me. I just chose to stay." The bench became something more than a seat. Sometimes someone left a note there. No name, just a few words. "Thank you for noticing I was crying. You told me where to go. I found it. For the tea, for the lamp, for being here." No one knew who left them, but no one ever threw them away. School kids sat there before classes. Older men, with paper cups and quiet words. Sometimes, someone sat just to feel the silence. The bench wasn't a monument. It was a place, a reminder that every day is a chance to be present, to see, to not look away, to pick up a wrapper, adjust the schedule, say good morning to someone everyone else ignores. They say an old man once asked Charlie, "Why are you still here? You don't need to be." And Charlie had just shrugged. "I'm not here because I need to. I'm here because it means something." And then he poured himself a cup of tea. So next time you're at Greenville Station, don't rush. Walk past the counters. Glance toward the window. The bench is there. The seat is still open, not for a name, for a step, for presence. The bench doesn't wait for titles, just footsteps. Let someone hear them in the morning. Sometimes the most reliable person in the whole town is the one who was never on the schedule. He just showed up and stayed.